In this video, I would be showing you how to create a column with a single line of text and populate that with the URL of the record set. So to start with, I have a model driven app over here. Now, as you see over here, I'm inside one of the records. So if you see this item, planets. So now this is a grid basically containing list of all the planets within our solar system. Now, what I want is like if I navigate to any of the records, say if I navigate to Saturn, and if I copy this URL, and if I go into the new tab and paste it, it will open this specific record. So, what I want is a field within here named as record URL and then store it in a single line of text. So, that's the use case. So if I want to accomplish that, what are the ways through which we can populate that field? So first thing, what I'm going to do is I'll be going into the solution. So you can create your own solution. I have a lot of solution items over here. Now, first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the table and then click on columns, and I will create a new column and I will name it as URL or the record URL. Make it a single line of text and click on save. Once you create that column, you can open the model driven app and you can navigate to the form. So I'll go into the form, planet form. So I know I'll show you how to edit the form. So first what you need to do is go into the table. So if you are in a table, navigate to the form and then open the main form. Now, once you open the main form, the form fields for the application will be listed. You have added a new field called as URL. Now, what you need to do is just drag and drop this URL field, click on save and publish, and then this particular field will be added into your application. So it might take some time. So I'll just do a quick refresh and see if it has been populated. Yes, it is populated. Now the goal is to, whenever this record loads, I want this URL to be populated with the record URL from here. Now, how do I go ahead and do that? Now, for that, what you need to do is again go back into the solution, and then you need to create something called as a process. Okay, so let me show you the solution over here. So this is the solution, and then these are the components within the solution. So what are we going to do is we'll click on new in the solution, go to automation and then process and click on workflow. So we are going to create a workflow. Now the workflow name would be to load the URL. Now the table which we want is planet. So I'll select the table planet and run workflow in the background is recommended. Now this same action can be performed using Power Automate as well, but then I'm showing you how to do that in a process. Once you click on create, it will provision a new workflow and you can decide when you want that workflow to be triggered. Now it can be triggered when a record is created, record is assigned, record status change, record fields change. But in our case, the whole goal is to load the URL whenever a new record is getting created. So we'll just leave it as it is, record is created. Process name, load URL, activate as process, run this workflow in the background, and in the add step, we will just say update the record. Now, in update the record, we need to select the primary entity, which is a table planet, and then from here you will say, you'll just put some description, load URL when record is created. And you set the properties, and within that properties you need to navigate to the URL field which we have added in the form. So URL, and then from here operator set to look for the primary entity planet, and then from here you just need to navigate to something called as record URL dynamic. So this is the field which we may need to put that within the URL field. So this goes over here, record URL dynamic. Okay, so let me select this and click on record URL dynamic, and you select this particular field, click on add, and you just say okay. And once you do click on okay, here record URL dynamic of that specific table will get populated. Now once you're done with it, click on save and close, and Once you are happy with the changes, click on activate. So do you want to activate the selected one process? This action will attempt to activate the process you selected, and I'll say okay, activate it. And make sure that once this is all done, you go into the solution, click on done over here, and try to find out the process which we have just created, load URL. Now, as you see over here, it has added this process which is of type workflow, load URL, and the status is on. So make sure that the status is on. If it is not on, then the workflow will not get triggered. Now let's attempt. So model driven app, the whole goal is whenever you create a new record. So if I click on new record and I'll just call it as Planet Exodus, I want this URL to be populated so that user can copy the record and then navigate to that specific record set. So I will not populate over here. You can also lock this field because you do not want user to be filling this field. It should be automatically populated. So I'll click on save. Now once I save, the in the background the process will run, and then it will start assigning the URL. So if I just click on refresh, it might take some time for that workflow process to run, but let me go back to the Planet Exodus. Then it should automatically populate the URL. Now if it doesn't populate, then what we need to do is we need to go ahead and check what has happened. But in this case, make sure that this load URL process which you have created, make sure that this one, you just click over here and make sure that it is turned on. Now we have already turned it on, and if I go into Planet Exodus again, and if you want, you can also select and publish everything. So I'll just go ahead and publish the entire work item what I wanted. And once it is published, let's go back to the model driven app again. This is the record which we have created which hasn't populated the URL. So let's go ahead and do another attempt. So I'll just call it Planet A, save. As you see over here, we have executed the workflow, but then still the URL is not getting populated. Now, this is the most common form of mistake you will identify. Now, what the issue is, in order to troubleshoot that, what you need to do is you need to go into the process and check process sessions. Now, as you see over here, we have added two records, Planet A and Planet Exodus, but then it hasn't populated the URL. Now, why it hasn't populated the URL? Because the status reason is waiting over here. So we may need to get an answer like why is it not populating? Now the workflow is getting triggered, but it is not getting populated. Now the answer lies over here. Now, if you click on this process name or you click on this process name, here it will open this record and it says you have exceeded the maximum number of characters in this field. So what has technically happened is like we are populating something called as a URL. Now, the field which we have created, remember the field which we have created over here for planet. So if I go into the planet, if I go into the columns, we have created a field called as URL. Okay, now the field which we have created, this field is basically the size is 100 characters. Okay, now we need more than that. Okay, so I'll just make it 1000. Now I'm not sure exactly which field which I have used. There are a couple of URL fields. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make both this field as 1000 character because the URL is exceeded. the size of the field URL. Now, in your case, there will be just one URL field. I have created a couple of fields, so that's why I'm making changes in both the fields. Now, once you set that field, what you need to do again is start a second attempt. Okay, so now here I'll just go ahead, click on new, and then I will say planet B, save. And I'll click on refresh just to see whether it has taken into account the field value or not. Now again, if it hasn't populated, then again go back to process session, try to refresh this, and here as well you will see planet B is still in waiting. Now again, we have changed the field value, but it still says you have exceeded the maximum number of characters in this field. So what you need to do is you need to again go back to the solution. So this is, let me just verify whether all the fields has a value 1000 or not. So this has not made that change, so I'll click on save. And once it is saved, make sure that your table is published, because sometimes it happens that if your table is not published, then it will not load the field value. So as you see over here, I have this table, I have this planet table, and then make sure that that table is published so that the changes are propagated and the workflow picks up the correct column metadata, and then it will start loading. So it's loaded now. So if you navigate to planets over here, click on new, and this time I'll say planet C, click on save. Go back to the process session again, and now as you see over here, planet C is succeeded. Now go back here, click on refresh, and then you should be able to see the URL which we have automatically populated. Now this was not a straightforward journey, like we encountered a lot of issues. Now these are the same issues which I have encountered when I started attempting this for the first time. So the first selection is you need to select the workflow, you need to create a column and make sure that column fits in the URL size. So the URL size, definitely this is more than 100 characters. So make sure that you have sufficient space so that you get the URL populated correctly. Now again, if I go into the planets, click on new, and I'll say planet X, click on save. The background, the process will run, and you may need to do a couple of refresh because it takes some time to execute that workflow process action. And once that workflow process action is succeeded, you should be able to see the URL populated. Now what are you going to do with the URL? You can use it in for some defining logic within your web API, or maybe you can use it for your Power Automate flows. And then once you copy the URL and then paste, it will navigate you to that specific record. So that's it, folks. This is how you basically populate the dynamic URL within a model driven app. Thanks for watching.